Once again, Donald Trump finds himself in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. The Nobel Peace Prize, for a start, an honour he desperately coveted yet utterly failed to earn, has gone to someone else. This latest snub, largely tied to Venezuela, underscores just how unqualified he was for the recognition, guys. Trump's inability to handle this rejection has sent him and his MAGA followers into a predictable spiral of outrage online. But before we dive into the social media fallout, guys, of his latest humiliation, a quick note: if you enjoyed this analysis, consider liking the video and subscribing. It really does truly help us cover these stories. Now let's unpack why Trump's anger over the Nobel goes beyond mere disappointment. Now, his aggressive strikes on Venezuelan vessels and the broader proxy conflicts he actually perpetuated make his indication almost laughable. Chris Murphy's breakdown of Trump's reckless approach to Venezuela highlights just how far removed the former president is from any real notion of peace.
We took a really important vote in the Senate last night that largely went unnoticed, and I want to tell you about it. Trump's authoritarianism, which is growing in seriousness inside the United States, is now happening overseas as well. A lot of people haven't paid attention to this, but the president has essentially begun a war by taking down boats in the Caribbean with airstrikes that he claims are being operated by drug cartels. He has offered no evidence of who's in these boats. They might be members of drug cartels, but they could be civilians, they could be Americans. But B, and more importantly, the president has no authorization to just decide that he is going to use U.S. military power overseas without congressional authorization, without the consent of the public. Most of these strikes are in the Caribbean. They are off the coast of Venezuela. There's real risk that these strikes could draw the United States into a war with Venezuela, a war that nobody in this country wants. But again, the principle is probably what's most important. This is a president who just doesn't believe that he is subject to the law.
What part of extrajudicial killings qualifies someone to be called a peace president? That's the real question here, guys. Time and time again, Donald Trump has proven that he doesn't just disregard the law, he openly despises it. From repeated legal violations at home to blatant breaches of international norms, Trump treats rules as optional. His reckless strikes on Venezuelan boats are a stark example, a pointless show of force driven by domestic failures, including his faltering immigration policies as well. Now, these aren't acts of strength or leadership, they are illegal, politically motivated attacks intended to manufacture the illusion of toughness. There's nothing honourable in this. There is no peace through strength. When the so-called strategy, is arbitrary violence abroad, it's merely Trump attempting to expand his authoritarian tendencies while ignoring the consequences. The Nobel Prize is a recognition, guys, which Trump craves but utterly fails to deserve. But before diving into his meltdown on social media, it's crucial to highlight the real winner and why their work is the story that truly matters. Nobel chair defends decision as he's grilled about Trump's campaign for Peace Prize. The chair of the Norwegian Nobel Committee, Jørgen Watno, pushed back against suggestions that this year's Nobel Peace Prize decision was made to spite President Donald Trump's public campaign for the award. He was asked directly just moments after he announced this year's prize would go to Venezuela's opposition leader, Maria Machado, whether Trump's repeated insistence that he deserves the prize had affected deliberations. A reporter in the room asked, during the past months, US President Donald Trump has repeatedly said he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize and he'd like to have it. He even said it would be an insult to the United States if he doesn't get it. What, as a chairman of the Nobel Peace Prize Committee, think of this? And how has this campaign-like activity by the president and his supporters, domestically and internationally, affected the deliberation and thinking in the committee? He replied, in the long history of the Nobel Peace Prize, I think this committee has seen many types of campaign media attention. We receive thousands and thousands of letters every year of people wanting to say what for them leads to peace. This committee sits in a room filled with the portraits of all laureates, and that room is filled with both courage and integrity. So we base only our decision on the work and the will of Alfred Nobel. The remarks came moments after Machado was awarded the 2025 Peace Prize. Friedness called her a brave and committed champion of peace who keeps the flame of democracy burning during a growing darkness. You wouldn't expect Donald Trump, you'd expect him to show a shred of grace or composure for not winning the prize. But of course, that's not what happened as usual. Instead of accepting reality like an adult, Trump erupted on Truth Social in one of his signature meltdowns, while his former White House circle scrambled his, this echo and outrage with wild self-pitying rants. They framed it all, as persecution, you could say. The same tired routine. The billionaire ex-president playing the victim as usual, pretending he's under attack, even he's the one spreading the chaos. The tantrum that followed wasn't surprising either. It was textbook Trump, guys. Every time he's denied the adoration he thinks he deserves, the mask always slips. And we see the same pattern, grievance, delusion, and a total inability to take responsibility is standard Trump practice. The White House's five-brand comms chief, Stephen Cheung, led the backlash, saying that the committee chose politics over peace. He wrote on X, President Trump will continue making peace deals, ending wars and saving lives. He has the heart of a humanitarian, and there will never be anyone like him who can move mountains with the sheer force of his will. The Nobel Committee proved they place politics over peace. Let's be clear, Donald Trump doesn't actually care about global affairs. Just a few weeks ago he claimed, he's now fully grasping the economic and military realities in Ukraine, insisting that this insight somehow proves he needs to funnel more resources to the allies so they can actually succeed. The truth is, Trump has no real understanding of geopolitics. He can't even accurately name the conflicts he supposedly ended because he's been excluded from crucial discussions that require knowledge and competence. All the grandiose claims about his own abilities, his self-proclaimed strengths and influences are nothing but illusions. Trump's actions are guided entirely by self-interest. He hasn't made the world any safer. He's only worked to boost Donald Trump. Every decision, every statement revolves around maintaining his image and his power. Chris Murphy, who we referenced earlier, broke this down perfectly, highlighting how Trump's so-called leadership is all spectacle with no substance.
That the way our news cycles works, the way that our brains work politically these days, is that we only see 24 hours at a time. So we spend a day or two talking about the latest outrage, the latest attempt to destroy our democracy. And then we set that one aside and we talk about and work on the next one. And we don't see the cumulative impact of what it means to have the Department of Justice relentlessly pursuing legally the president's political opponents, what it means to have our media begin to look like state-run and state-owned media, what it looks like to have our troops being deployed all over the country to try to suppress dissent. What's going to happen here is not likely elections being canceled or a coup. What he's trying to do is to just suffocate the space that the opposition has to operate such that there's never enough oxygen for Democrats or any political opposition party to beat him. That's, what happened in Hungary. The political opposition party still exists there. The rules are just rigged so that they can never, ever prosecute their case. They can never win a national election. So when you look at everything he's doing together at the DOJ, at the FCC, at the Department of Defense, it is all designed to try to convince people to just stay quiet, to not show up for the protests, to not run for office, to not vote. That's how our democracy is destroyed. The elections still happen, but the same party wins election after election after election, and that party is Donald Trump's party, his family's party, a party increasingly of oligarchs who are making money off of this government.
Senator, I want to underscore that what you have done today in terms of laying out the the connecting the dots, you are really shining a light on the roadmap that Donald Trump is laying out here. And I think that's important because I was just at an event earlier today here in Washington, D.C. I was in Denver this past weekend, and the folks that are, plugged into what we do every single day, they are very concerned. But by and large, many folks, they don't feel like it's necessarily a 5-alarm fire, or they're like, when we get on the other side of this, not understanding that it's going to take work to get on the other side of this. Retribution is not a side note here for the Trump administration. It is the centerpiece. And the Insurrection Act that he's talking about is not just a suggestion. He is openly telling us that he is going to do it. And without any pushback, it is going to happen. And let's just be clear. National Guard troops are on their way to Chicago as we speak. The governor did not ask for them to be there. National Guard troops are attempting to be deployed in Oregon. The governor did not ask for them to be there. National Guard troops were deployed in California. The governor did not ask for them to be there. Have we slipped already into the authoritarianism? Is there a way out? I mean, give us your unvarnished thoughts here.
Well, listen, I mean, we are not on the verge of an authoritarian takeover. We're in the middle of it. Now, it's not too late. We haven't lost our democracy. But, we sometimes like to think of the first term Donald Trump, the bumbling White House that didn't seem to have any theory of the case from day to day. This is a very different White House, right? Stephen Miller and his gang, they have a plan. They have a plan that they are executing to transition our country from democracy to something fundamentally different, maybe even autocracy. And that's what I tried to lay out on the floor today, is how this plan is being operationalized every single day. But no, it is not a lost cause. Ultimately, what we know from history is that when a big enough portion of the population, the number's normally around 2%, show up to protests, are regularly engaged in peaceful civic action, enough sand gets thrown in the gears of the attempts to destroy the democracy that you end up saving it. So we have an opportunity in these elections this November to send a signal. We have an opportunity through the protests on October 18th to show the country and the world that we aren't lying down. So this is a serious moment. It's almost lost, but it's definitely not lost yet.
From this president, that any use of force that he condones will be protected.
Yeah, so I certainly am not knowledgeable enough about the interpretation of the Insurrection Act to know the answer to that question. But I think you're pointing out, what is the most important underlying fact here. The president has already made it clear, whether or not he invokes the Insurrection Act, that if you commit violence in his name, you are going to be immunized. You are going to be excused. You're going to be let off the hook. Whereas if you even hint at violence, actually, frankly, if you even just criticize him publicly, that you are going to be met with the full force of the law, illegally, unconstitutionally. And so I think it is really important to anchor ourselves in that reality, that if you commit a violent act and you're doing it to help Donald Trump, you're going to get away with it, which is a signal for more of the right to engage in increased violence.
Donald Trump's relentless push to expand his authoritarian agenda is all he's ever truly after. Let's call it what it is, guys. Let's be clear. Trump doesn't care about peace, affordability, public safety, or crime. Everything he does is just about the grift, and that grift needs to be exposed. Over the past month, he's openly stoked political violence, from attacking peaceful protesters to encouraging chaos, all while pretending to be a statesman worthy of admiration, asking for a Nobel Peace Prize while orchestrating or condoning violence, shooting at priests in Chicago, targeting demonstrators. It's a grotesque contradiction. That's not leadership, guys. It's certainly definitely not peace. Now, we'll continue to call out this hypocrisy and dangerous behaviour whenever it appears. For those following along, you can support this coverage by liking the video, please, and subscribing. Thanks for sticking with us to the end, and I'll see you on the next one.